Russia's War in Ukraine by Helen, Regan, Joshua Berlinger, and Jack Guy, CNN. More than 1.6 million people have crossed into Russia from Ukraine, Russian state media reports from CNN's Anna Chernova. More than 1.6 million people from Ukraine and breakaway republics in the Donbas region have crossed into Russia since the start of the Kremlin's invasion, Russian state news agency TASS reported Thursday, citing a law enforcement source. As of Wednesday morning, more than 1.6 million people, including almost 263,000 children, crossed the border, said the source. CNN cannot independently confirm the number of border crossings, but the numbers are similar to official Ukrainian estimates. Earlier Thursday, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky accused Russia of pursuing a consistent criminal policy of deporting Ukrainian people into mostly remote areas of Russia, adding that more than 200,000 children have been taken to Russia so far. The aim is to steal people and make deportees forget about Ukraine and not be able to return, said Zelensky. According to TASS, 33,000 people, including 11,000 children, are currently being kept in 559 temporary accommodation centers across Russia. The rest have been placed with relatives and privately, it added. Four sources familiar with the latest Western intelligence assessments told CNN in late May that hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians have now been processed through a series of filtration camps in eastern Ukraine. They were then sent across the border to Russia as part of a systemized program of forced removal and resettlement, the sources said. Some context. In April, a CNN investigation revealed that Russian forces and elite separatist soldiers were taking residents of the city of Mariupol to a so-called filtration center set up in Berlinger, where they were registered before being sent on to Russia, many against their will. At the time, Mariupol's city council accused Russian forces of bringing Ukrainians to these centers as part of a broader effort to cover up potential war crimes by destroying potential witnesses. Zelensky has also alleged that Ukrainians have been forced to move to Russia. Their documents and means of communications are confiscated, he said on May 6th. According to Michael Carpenter, U.S. ambassador to the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, the practice would be in a violation of international humanitarian law and a war crime if people were forcibly being displaced from Ukraine to Russia. What we're covering, the head of Luhansk Regional Military Administration said street fighting continues in Severodonetsk, but Russian forces now occupy about 80% of the key eastern city. President Volodymyr Zelensky says more than 200,000 Ukrainian children have been forcibly taken to Russia since the start of the war. Russia said Ukraine's demands to the West for advanced rocket launchers is a direct provocation after the US and UK agreed to provide new missile systems to Kyiv. NATO said it didn't foresee Russia retaliating to the US move. Russian missiles hit a railway in western Ukraine near the border with Slovakia, according to Ukrainian officials. At least 7 killed, 26 injured in the past 24 hours in Ukraine, from CNN's Oleksandra, Ochman, and Wright. A woman collects belongings from rubble in Sloviansk on June 1st. The war in Ukraine has left at least 7 people dead and 26 injured in the past 24 hours, Ukrainian officials said. Here is where much of the fighting is taking place. Donbas. Ukraine's military said it has repelled 13 enemy attacks in the direction of Donetsk and Luhansk, the two regions that make up Donbas. In the past 24 hours, northeast of Sloviansk and the Liman area, Russian forces tried to advance but suffered losses and withdrew. An update from the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine said, most of Severodonetsk, one of the last cities to hold out in Luhansk, has been taken by Russia, a Ukrainian military official there said. Southern Ukraine, 2 people were killed and 2 others were injured Wednesday in Nikolaev, a southern city not far from the front line, after Russia fired on residential quarters, damaging 2 high-rise buildings and 4 homes, regional officials said. We're being shelled from all sides. Vitaly Kim, head of Nikolaev Regional Military Administration, said on Thursday. Nikolaev is not far from Kherson, which has been under Russian control since early in the invasion. Kim said reports have emerged that Russian forces in Kherson have started looting stores in Kherson, and they are taking everything out in the direction of Crimea. In the event that Ukrainian forces retake the city, a regional official said the situation in Kherson is stably tense with fighting and shelling continuing. Many areas are without electricity, water, and gas, and in need of medicine and humanitarian aid. Further west in South Bull, 6 areas were targeted by mortars and artillery, and airstrikes were also launched from Mi-24 helicopters, regional officials said. Zaporizhzhia, 2 people received shrapnel wounds after Russian troops fired artillery on residential homes in the Poloy district, the Zaporizhzhia military administration said. Northeast Ukraine. Russia's main efforts in Kharkiv, Ukraine's second largest city, were focused on maintaining the occupied borders, the military said. Regional officials said 1 woman was found dead under the rubble of a school after shelling overnight. 1 man was also injured. 6 other civilians were also injured after shelling to 2 areas southeast and northeast of Kharkiv. Russian forces retreated from the city in May, leaving behind evidence of potential atrocities. 3 civilians in Sumy, a city northwest of Kharkiv, were injured after a Russian plane fired 3 missiles around midnight during an air raid, destroying 1 house and damaging several others. Western Ukraine. In Lvov, the city in western Ukraine that is housing countless internally displaced Ukrainians, 5 people were injured after Russia carried out a missile strike on Wednesday night, targeting railways. Train services have been impacted. Assessed means the Institute for the Study of War has received reliable and independently verifiable information to demonstrate Russian control or advances in those areas. Russian advances are areas where Russian forces have operated and launched attacks, but they do not control them. Claimed areas are where sources have said control or counteroffensives are occurring, but ISW cannot corroborate nor demonstrate them to be false. Ukraine's football team preparing for World Cup playoff final on Sunday. From CNN's Mitchell McCluskey, Josie Pennington, and Ben Church. Ukraine supporters celebrate after defeating Scotland in a World Cup qualifier on June 1st. Ukraine's men's national football team is just one game away from qualifying for the World Cup after beating Scotland on Wednesday night. If Ukraine can beat Wales in Cardiff on Sunday, the team will make it to the tournament in Qatar, which is scheduled to start on November 21st. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky celebrated the 3-1 win against Scotland in an Instagram post. There are times when you don't need many words. Pride is enough. Simply thanks to you guys, he wrote. We're all fighting, everyone on their own front, for this, for our blue and yellow flag, for our coat of arms on our hearts. For Ukraine is not dead yet, which cannot be silenced, he said. Wednesday's playoff had originally been scheduled to take place in March, but Russia's invasion of Ukraine forced the match's postponement. Given that staying in Ukraine was too dangerous, the squad went to a training camp in Slovenia on May 1st to prepare for the game. Prior to playing Scotland, Ukraine's last competitive game had been in November.